We are starting to see some great games come back to the map, but this is one of the coolest I've ever seen. This game is going to ship early next year from Bungie, and this is the first time anybody has ever seen it. It's the first time they've debuted it. And so I'm very happy to welcome on the stage Jason Jones, who is the co-founder of Bungie and the Halo project lead. Halo is the name of this game, and we're going to see for the first time Halo. Welcome, Jason.
Hello, dear viewer. It's been a while. Work has got me down bad. But never fear, because I'm back. For now. Halo. It is difficult to quantify and summarize the effect which Halo has had on my life as I was growing up. I was 9 when Halo 3 dropped, and it, as a consequence, became the first Halo title that I ever got the chance to play and enjoy. What made Halo stand out to me in comparison to such titles as Half-Life or Mass Effect was the co-op feature that meant that me and my friends could enjoy this experience together. And what made it even better was that we were the perfect number, 4. And in our quartet we spent countless hours playing Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, and the campaign, fighting over rules we made up on the spot, looking at each other's screens and pretending that we did not. The classic. It was a wonderful, and dare I say, magical time. One of the greatest, more specific memories of Halo that I specifically recall was playing Halo ODST back when I couldn't really read English. I came to realize that my box had come with an invitation to the Halo Reach beta, and I still feel that joy in my very bones to this day. When reading on online forums and discussing Halo with others, I hear similar stories from across the globe. Halo was not just a personal, but a global phenomenon that spanned across cultures and age groups in a manner which we seldom see, especially today. I think this success stems from several different factors that all combine into an experience which has become ubiquitous in our contemporary culture. Honor, glory, justice, sacrifice, community, good versus evil, redemption, forgiveness, and the underdog facing the great giant, the great evil, if you will.
For a brick, he flew pretty good.
Halo was of course not without its flaws, do not get me wrong, but what it got right in spades. And that is why all the games up until Halo Reach hold such an esteemed place in our hearts. But over time it is more than safe to suggest that Halo has indeed changed. Oh, it has changed indeed as time has passed. It was also a series of games that were very pro-military, which is rare to see these days, with plots having to be deconstructed, the lesser of two evils being introduced, and moral grayness ruling the modern writing room. And I am sick of it. In Halo, the humans are the good guys, the Covenant, the Xeno scum are the bad guys. Simple as. Sure, we see how the Sangheili eventually grow to respect humanity and then enter into a great alliance, and for nuance we of course have Oni doing the CIA shite, and doing the odd bit of kidnapping. But overall, the story as a whole is good versus evil. But even though there was a clear dynamic of good versus evil, there is still space for understanding, redemption, and forgiveness to be witnessed in the series. The Sangheili warriors, or the elites as we know them of the Covenant, had been spearheading the extermination of humanity for decades. But they, in spite of this over the course of the series, they grow a grudging respect for the humans. They start to wonder and ask questions as to why this brave race that has fought them so brilliantly have not been invited into the Covenant after lesser races were allowed in. The whole war, as it turns out, was orchestrated by 3 prophets, or Sanshayum, that uncovered the information from the Forerunner AI mendicant bias that humanity were the true inheritors of the Forerunner legacy, the Reclaimers. To hide this fact, instead of welcoming humanity, they instead started a war to eradicate humanity. And as the years went on, they eventually sought to replace the Sangheilies by also exterminating them and replacing them with the Brutes, or the Yulhane, or I'll just call them Brutes, as the main military race of the Covenant. And in this struggle, humanity and the Sangheili found themselves as allies, reluctantly and begrudgingly entering into an alliance to face the Covenant threat. And within this alliance, the first seeds of forgiveness begin to sprout as the humans are not yet ready to forgive them, but allows them to start redeeming themselves, which over time will lead to forgiveness and perhaps reconciliation. And that is truly wonderful, horrifying, and beautiful, and shows the complex depth of Halo's writing and lore. This is why the ending of Halo 3 is so poignant, horrifying, and truly sad. Billions of beings having been murdered for a war that was started by 3 arrogant Sanshayum, or prophets, to hide the fact that the basis of their religion was a lie. But there, at the very end, they stand together before the memorial as victims of the same corruption, with a fragile peace but a greater understanding and appreciation for each other. This is the emotional core of it all. And what Halo also does that was a brilliant addition is the greater threat that looms in the background as the Covenant is waging their war of extermination. The Flood. The eldritch horror that strives to conquer and convert the galaxy into a great, homogeneous hive mind biomass. Meaning that every battle, every death, and every projectile fired in the Human Covenant War has been a sideshow to the actual threat. You also take the time to uncover the great secrets of the Forerunners which were left behind during their own struggle and eventual defeat by the Flood, alongside at the time the even greater question of what or who they actually were, which of course was later spoiled and ruined by the post-Bungie installments, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's also not forget the amazing ship names. By God, the ship names. The Say My Name, the Truth and Reconciliation, the Pillar of Autumn. I have, as a consequence over many years and hours, pondered and come up with my own Halo ship name ideas. So this is my presentation on potential ship names for Halo Studios. I'll take my royalty check in the mail. Sedentary indignation, voluptuous verisimilitude, rambunctious inefficacy, malignant erectile, inglorious bastardization, Zendaya repudiation, requiem of diversity, erroneous poignant. Ship names aside, and looking down at the smaller things that cast a large shadow, namely our main man, the main character himself, Master Chief. The Master Chief, being a semi-voiced protagonist, is also a smart move by the writers. He still is a character in his own right and he does speak, but there are still enough blank spaces for us, the players, to fill out whatever we may like. The whole package that this series of games offered left something for each of us to find our own, separate enjoyment in. Even the music which we heard in the Halo games were a beast of their own. Never before have I experienced a game or series with a soundtrack so iconic, people sing it in the school bathrooms. Track after track in the OSTs are masterpiece after masterpiece, made by Martin O'Donnell mainly and others. Halo is a series consistently blessed with amazing composers and great tracks that helps to deepen the experience and the emotion that can be found within, which does elevate the relationship and the care which we have for the characters we find within the world, with none being better than our most constant companion, Cortana. Master Chief and his growing relationship with Cortana and their dependence on each other as the series goes on is beautiful, and helps to add a touch of much-needed femininity into this otherwise incredibly masculine series of games. The humor, the companionship, and the character which she brings to the table is something that the later installments would later find out is not so easily replaced.
Think it would be okay? You're sure?
You get to choose your name.
Then I think I might have the perfect one.
Oh, fuck off.
You will never be her. Each installment from Combat Evolved to Halo Reach found new and interesting ways to build on from the previous installment, which led to a holistic experience that is hard to rival. Even though major gameplay elements were never really changed too much, there was still enough variety in weapons, new vehicles, stories, and characters to make each game feel very unique. The lore, the shooting, the visuals, the stories, or the characters, this series of games truly had it all. And after the glorious ending of Halo 3 and the ending of the beginning of Halo Reach, the series was at an all-time cultural, financial, and critical peak. So how could they possibly fuck this up? When I first played Halo 4, I recalled how excited and happy I was that there was a new and interesting chapter ready to be enjoyed set in my beloved Halo universe. I distinctly also remember very quickly starting to think, what the fuck is this after I started playing? The game feels vastly different from the other Halos, especially being the title that was released after Halo Reach. Picking up the legacy of any great or beloved piece of media, especially a franchise by the likes of Halo, is no easy feat. It was a task that I don't envy 343 Studios having to face. Building upon the legacy after the conclusion of the series' main driving conflict and creating stories of the same magnitude and interest is, I would assert, nearly impossible. I think the key ingredient to why Halo 4 became far less interesting is the exclusion of the Flood, because they had been summarily defeated and annihilated by the end of Halo 3, every last spore and being gone. They can't exactly pull some new threat of the same scale and horror out of their arse. But that did not stop them from trying. And with a new game, here cometh the new art style and the new design language of Human, Covenant, and Forerunner crap. This is where I think most obviously, as it's a visual thing, they really shat the bed for absolutely no gain. Everything in Halo 4 looks awful to me, as it has lost the brilliant charm of the previous installments. The earlier Halo games all had a bit of grit to them. It did stray into the higher science fantasy when it came to the Covenant and the Forerunners, but the humans still maintained a quite realistic and grittier look to them, helping to ground the world. These visuals also help to show truly how advanced the Covenant were in comparison to the UNSC and how much of a technological gap there was between the factions. With Halo 4, this technological difference between aliens and humans have been mostly erased, and humanity has gone on to become the leading race in the galaxy, having essentially taken on the mantle of responsibility from the Forerunners to be the guardians of the galaxy.
What are you doing?
Halo 4 is also the game where shitty Gundams made their first entry into the Halo universe with the Spartan 4 program. Nearly every single new piece of Spartan armor which Halo 4 and the later games introduced look like rejected, shitty Gundams. They are awful. They should have stuck to the brilliant aesthetic that Halo Reach introduced, and the fact they didn't shows they barely had a clue of what they were actually doing or attempting to accomplish. Humanity becoming the leading race in the post-human war world basically means that they're on top. They have the greatest weaponry and the fleets, with the title of Spartan becoming further diluted with the Force. This robs the series of the most important characteristics of the previous games. Humans being on the back foot in the face of an almost completely insurmountable force bearing down upon them. Halo 5 also brilliantly decided to update Halo for modern audiences by attempting to turn Master Chief, Halsey, and Cortana into the villains. In hindsight, isn't that truly the greatest signs of brilliance? Attempting to turn one of the most beloved protagonists in all of gaming into a villain, what could possibly go wrong? What Halsey did within the context of the lore is basically kidnap children in order to turn them into super soldiers to prevent the collapse of human civilization. by utilizing this group of warriors to surgically strike before a rebellion became too widespread. So the morality of this can of course be questioned, but it was ultimately in the effort to not allow humanity to split and become divided, which would probably then lead to further conflict across the stars. This is where the Spartan program came in, where in previous lore it appeared to be mostly voluntary with the Orion Project or the Spartan Ones, with the later Spartan 2s being the involuntary introduction into Coney's army. Had she not done what she did, humanity would have been further hamstrung by their inability to effectively fight back, and in essence, this handful of men and women would end up aiding to save humanity from the brink of doom. But a hilarious aspect that was later added by 343 for some reason was that the librarian, the Forerunner lady, did something. And what she did was to imprint certain traits into humanity so that they developed to either find the cure for the Flood, which was a rumor during the Human Forerunner War, or to do the necessary technological mumbo-jumbo to succeed in grasping the mantle of responsibility. The mantle of responsibility, Jesus. So Halsey kidnapping and forcing children to become soldiers wasn't actually her fault because it was actually a part of her very nature to do so. So, Your Honor, I move to dismiss the case against the Halster. She didn't have a choice. It's a part of her DNA. One point that also made me a bit uncomfortable was the goonification in Halo 4 of Cortana. It was always present, yes, don't get me wrong, to get the mostly male player base some eye candy to look at during the course of the games. But the way they changed her feels like it was a distraction more than anything to do with body type representation or some other such nonsense. But of course, now with combat evolved, I must say that I appreciate that Jerma finally got his beauty in the spotlight. But replaying Halo 4 and seeing the particular angles they chose time and time again, it felt as a desperate attempt to distract the player from what should truly matter: the plot. But plot matters not when you've got cake. Yes. It is quite intriguing to consider that Cortana is a personality imprint from Halsey. But as we can see, she looks nothing like Halsey. So what this means is that Halsey deliberately went out of her way to make Cortana as goonable as possible. What did Halsey mean by this? Why is she giving Master Chief mummy issues? Oh wait, it appears all the Spartan 2s have mummy issues. Oh dear.
Mom.
Indeed.
But pulling you out from Cortana and refocusing on the Forerunners, the new Forerunner lore that 343 decided to introduce isn't all that bad, and I'm not going to say that there aren't some kernels of brilliance or some really cool and neat ideas, but fundamentally I think that the changes they made post-Halo 3 were ultimately a mistake. The Forerunners turning out to be humans was always the greater twist to me, and turning them into the pseudo-human Forerunners was sort of a nothing burger in comparison.
Child of my makers, inheritor of all they left behind, you are Forerunner. But this ring is mine.
In Halo 4, we get introduced to the Didact, which is essentially a Reddit moderator become villain. Who am I kidding? They're always villains. The Didact being the last of the Forerunners striving to compose all of humanity and turn them into his warrior slaves, is not as interesting of a story arc as the Human Covenant and Flood Wars. They even let the Didact kill 4 Spartan 2s in some comic nobody read to show how badass he really is, because if you didn't know, he survived Halo 4's ending for some reason and died off screen. Why? Who cares? It's 343. What makes the Didact even worse as a villain is that he got instantly cucked by his own wife that defeated him several times already. And she could have simply ended him, but instead she put him in the corner for 100,000 years. Not really a threatening villain in that regard. And then, as they kill the Didact off screen, they need a new villain. Again. And they see no better option than to turn our former, deeply beloved ally into a basic AI villain. She's trying to take over the galaxy so that the Clankers can take over the mantle of responsibility, and she must be stopped. No thanks, you can keep that plot, thanks. In Halo 5, we're also introduced to our new protagonist, Spartan Locke. And the fact that he even has a chance against Chief is because the Chief still is holding back the entire time, apparently.
It is insane to think that they are all refusing to actually listen to Earth's greatest hero, and that the UNSC and ONI leadership are already this corrupt a mere 4 years after the very optimistic or bittersweet ending of Halo 3. It is ridiculous. I don't want them to make the same games over and over again, don't get me wrong. But it is like these people looked at what was already great and made the conscious choice to move away from what worked and what could be built upon in favor of going off the deep end and drowning. Everything about the new games feels weird. It should be a game that I should actually enjoy, but at every turn I think they took a misstep. The art style, the weapons, the antagonists, humanity now simply being too strong is probably the biggest of all the issues. What modern Halo is now is no longer what made Halo truly great. A hero rising through the ashes of a dying race to fight back the hordes of zealous and evil aliens led by crazed prophets. And looking at 343, which eventually became Halo Studios, which has spent the past 14 years exploring what they could do with Halo in the post-Halo world. Let's say that again. They have spent 14 years jumping from massive shift to massive shift, from Halo 4 to 5 to Infinite, and now with yet another remaster of Combat Devolved. So soon after the previous remaster. Think about this. They have a studio called Halo Studios that can't make a Halo game. A studio that self-reported that they hired individuals that hate Halo. Truly, just because you say you are something does not make you that thing. Who knew hiring people that hate Halo to make Halo is an utterly terrible idea? Sort of like hiring people with peanut allergies to review peanut butter. It is a recipe for a lawsuit and a disaster. And as a consequence of this hatred, with one of the truest signs of an incompetent writer, they forced their own crap into Halo.
Takes more than fancy armor and a good PR campaign to impress me.
And what do we get? Ass. Absolute ass.
Nice work.
Thanks. Spartans aren't the only badasses in the UNSC.
They have missed, time and time again, the golden rule of adaptations that is best put by Peter Jackson, the legendary director of The Lord of the Rings.
As filmmakers, as writers, we had no interest whatsoever in putting our junk, our baggage into these movies. We just thought we should take what Tolkien cared about clearly, we should take those and we should put them into the film. This should ultimately be Tolkien's film, it shouldn't be ours.
And this lack of any sort of care, love, or dare I say, reverence for what they are working on is one of the fundamental issues that plagues modern games media. Mindless corporate game manufacturers that work without passion or appreciation for the works that are beloved by millions. In any case, I digress, and it is time for us to briefly touch the studio that was 343 Studios and is now Halo Studios. Noticing is sometimes a curse, and we have been doing an awful lot of noticing recently, haven't we? The tale is as old as modern games development, with the old heads striving to create pieces of art that entertain us and employ them. A mutually beneficial relationship co-opted by large corporations or new corporate structures that inevitably take over the studios. When the corporate HR Karens have arrived, it is a sign of the end times for studio people. Remember BioWare, Bethesda, Ubisoft, maybe even CD Projekt Red is on shaky ground at this time. I get the same vibe from their CEOs and leadership like I do from the McDonald's CEO chowing down on that wonderful burger. Sorry, I mean their wonderful product. Yum yum.
It's a delicious product.
It keeps happening over and over again, not just necessarily because of wokeness, but because of the constant need to increase and push for profits before reinforcing and building upon the art.
But then, hilariously enough, Halo Studios has barely released a Halo game since they were founded, at least an original Halo game. All they appear to be doing these days is striving to drive people into the microtransaction side of the Master Chief Collection to get people to buy those new, awful armors they keep vomiting up, and this goes for a lot of games and development studios. It's must-sell product that rules the hearts and minds of these people. These people have attempted to make a Halo game for 14 years and still haven't figured it out. They have to keep looking at the notes of the previous games and simultaneously hate them and not dare to innovate upon them. Nor do they let the series progress to any meaningful point. It doesn't have to be the most extravagant reimagining or the pulling out of some new cosmic threat out of your ass, but these people haven't been able to figure it out for 14 years. If it took me 14 years to figure out how to copy someone else's homework that poorly, I'd be deeply, deeply ashamed. But naturally, the shit still sells, and they act like it doesn't stink, so what can you do? In 14 years, Halo Studios have not been capable of actually building upon the legacy of the series. They sure did try, but has any of it genuinely stuck? Do people genuinely think that the direction they are forcing Halo is good? I personally do not, but hey, if you like wasting your money on crap, that is your choice indeed. Like I mentioned before, for some reason Halo Studios decided it's a fantastic idea to kill off the new villain, the Didac, in a goddamn comic, not leaving his fate within the hands of the players at the end of Halo 4. What a bloody choice that was. And lest we forget what they did to the most beloved, truly silent protagonist in Halo, the Rookie. Instead of treating us to Halo ODST 2, where we get to take part in the post-Covenant war campaigns to stamp out Covenant remnants or resurgent insurgents, nay, they kill him off in a book. Yay! A fantastic opportunity to perhaps have us play as Buck or some other character and witness it ourselves. Nay, one of the cooler characters dies off screen. Wonderful. In a book that nobody fucking read. It is an absolute treat to witness how when these people finally get off their asses to actually add new things, it ends up being annoying self-inserts, or they add in personal politics or propaganda. This sort of train wreck writing needs to be totally expunged from our media. Their ChatGPT account must be banned and they must be laughed out of the writing room. We as consumers deserve better treatment and better stories, content and games than this godforsaken crap. Can't wait for the remaster of Halo Reach, The Reachening. It's insane to think about. Through all this time, they have remastered Halo CE twice, with the constant resurrection of Halo CE being done in the vain attempt to dangle the keys before our eyes and say, remember, this is the thing that you love. If you're unable to look at the absolute mess of campaign devolved and not see any issues with the trajectory of Halo, then you, dear viewer, are indeed a part of this problem. Halo is a dearly and deeply beloved franchise, which is quite honestly a dead franchise at this point, that is being artificially kept alive by Microsoft's big money. Microsoft doesn't even treat it like the franchise responsible for selling the Xbox anymore, which we can see according to the sales figures. That's gotta be a pretty big yikes there, Mr. Bill Gates. Had Halo been left entirely to the free market, the franchise would probably have been sold, put in better and more passionate hands, and we'd probably have some better games. Who am I kidding? We'd probably be in the same spot that we are currently, just under new management. It is mostly our nostalgia and the nostalgia baiting they put in their new titles that is keeping Halo alive for us. Without them constantly reusing Cortana, the Chief, and all the most common tropes over and over again, we'd have nothing interesting nor positive to look at.
What more do you want from me?
Way back when I first heard that 343 was a studio formed to further the Halo legacy, I was quite excited. Riding off of the series' heights of Halo Wars, Reach, and ODST, and the main trilogy, they truly were put in a position of great privilege. Success handed on a platter with room to spare for them to freely move within. Dare I say, even beyond. It is always very easy to be negative.
especially on the internet, and double down on the thing you think is bad. It is another thing entirely to offer some constructive criticism and to be clear about what you actually expect from the things you care about. One's opinion is naturally not the be-all end-all, but this is ultimately about having a conversation about the fandom. So this is what I'd like to see from Halo. The main driving and central conflict of the franchise was concluded at the end of Halo 3. That, of course, being the Human Covenant Flood War that threatened the entire galaxy. This war almost spanned 30 years, meaning that there is plenty of wiggle room to tell stories of alternate perspectives and campaigns that occurred during that time. We as the players basically only get to take part in the tail end of the war, being the Fall of Reach and beyond, and the Harvest campaign in Halo Wars, which takes place roughly 5 years after the start of the war. The best alternatives for Halo sequels and prequels, as I see it, could take place in between the years-long Harvest campaign and the Fall of Reach, obviously, with plenty of new and interesting things that could be done, like a Halo ODST 2, which could go even beyond the end of the Covenant War, like I mentioned previously. Basically, what I'm thinking about is that Halo ODST 2 would take place as humanity was struggling to regain control over the remains of their empire, and the colonies that were abandoned. We could be sent to do covert cleanup operations to destroy Covenant remnants, or to go kill human rebel leaders and pirates that were trying to set up their own little kingdoms post-war. It could be far more easy to have a morally grey story, as it is an ODST storyline, which would be fine. But more traditionally, they could have made a Halo game set during the Harvest campaign, concurrent with Halo Wars, where maybe we could play as Avery Johnson, who technically is a Spartan 1, so he'd still technically be taking on the role as a Spartan, as he fought in humanity's first contact war with extraterrestrials. There is so much more room within the war that you can explore new and interesting facets of the conflict without it becoming stale, but instead they are forcefully treading water with the series, attempting to trudge forward into the great unknown of their very own incontinence. And mind you, all of this is just off the top of my bloody head. I want to see the return of the more pro-patriotism or pro-military angles that they explored, and to be clear, just because you are pro-military does not mean that you are pro-war. Something civic pacem parabellum blah blah. Even something fundamental that I feel is missing is something that I find rather intriguing, as I never really considered what an important piece of the Halo puzzle that it is. Religion. Namely that of the mostly Christian flavorings of the Halo universe, with many of the names, places, and characters which we encounter in the series bearing some flavors from Christianity. I'm just repeating myself. The Ark, the Prophets, the Arbiter's Crisis of Faith, Heresy, and would you look at that, a bloody Halo. It may not be super heavy-handed or particularly in your face, even though they use these very obvious names, because the games and lore handle it with grace and finesse. But it is there, and it is an important part of the spirituality and the depth of the games. And it is something that I feel, and it is very much a feeling with religion, that is missing from the later games. I'd go so far as to accuse them of being afraid of embracing that part of the Halo legacy because they either don't like it or aren't competent enough to properly deal with the subject, or both. Likely both. This spirituality is in essence the very soul of the game, that permeates its entire existence, and without it we are thoroughly robbed of the whole, and instead we are forced to subsist on a mere husk. Or at least you do that bought Combat Evolved. That money is still firmly and wonderfully still within my wallet. Write what you know, but these people don't know anything. Turning our heroes into the villains may be your hobby, Halo Studios, but it sure isn't mine.